Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I'm really feeling very privileged to be in a school that loves the Lord. That's the most important part. And I am a grandmother. I have 19 grandchildren, but we have actually over 200 children that we brought from Russia that were adopted here. So I'm really claiming all of them. So I'm a grandmother to anyone that wants to call me babushka. They welcome to do so. Thank you so much for having me here in such a wonderful environment, and I pray that whatever I say today and share with you how God has touched my life will possibly and hopefully impact you, that you will remember that our Lord is with us at all times, even the hard times, scary times, lonely times, He is with us. I'll give you the background of where I came from, actually. I was about your age when I lost all of my family. And so it's very special time for you to be thinking about that, because it could happen to any of us at any time. And how do we deal with it? I was born in Yugoslavia. It is in Europe, and my family actually immigrated from Russia. They, Dad was involved at that time with the king that was at that time in Russia, the Tsar, and he was in one of the military areas of work. And so their life was very good in Russia, although there were not very many happy people in Russia at that time. There was a lot of poverty and a lot of unfairness. And this is why the Russian Revolution took hold of that country. And so the Bolsheviks took over. But the government really didn't believe that that will last forever. And so many people went to Europe, different places. And my family was sent to Yugoslavia. At that time, King Alexandra was in charge, and so Dad was involved there. And I had an older brother who was already came back with them, but my twin brother and I were born in Yugoslavia, in Sarajevo. I was raised in a Russian Orthodox background as a believer, and unfortunately, my mom died when I was 3 years old, so I really don't know much about my mom except what my dad used to tell me. Dad never remarried. Dad loved Mom. And Dad was quite a musician also. He played piano and he played violin beautifully. The people there did not believe that the revolution is going to last very long. They kept thinking they're going to go back to their homeland. So we used to have a big gathering in our home. Our home was very large, and we had help, servants, and there was a lot of gathering, and then the men would always come in their uniform, like ready to go back. Ladies dressed in their fine clothes and having a good time. We were allowed to participate a little bit in the activity, not a whole lot. I'll have to tell you some funny story about it. My twin brother heard Dad tell that when they have lips, they have a long tongue. And so one day when they had all those beautiful ladies there and the gentlemen at the big gathering, music was going on. My little brother snuck down and walked to the lady and said, "Can you open your mouth?" And she said, "Why?" He said, "I wanted to see how long your tongue is." So you can imagine the horror on my dad's face, and he was escorted very quickly, so we were not allowed to come around. Lots of good things that happened when I was growing up for the short period of time in Yugoslavia in our home. We had lots of good times. So my dad, for one thing, we had beautiful gardens, and the gardens were filled with rose bushes. My dad loved the roses, and he said, I'm growing all of those for your wedding someday. The church will be filled with the roses. I was obviously very special to my dad because he related, my personality, my looks, I guess, as a child to his wife that passed away. We had lots of good times, but then what happened is I was sent to a private school, just like you all are in a private school. There was a school for the girls only, and there was a school for the boys. So my brother was sent to that school, and I was sent to the girls' school. And I would come home after the school session was over. They would pick me up, and we would have a summers spending at a wonderful place on the Mediterranean Sea where we had a home, or up in the mountains where there was the snow. It was a fun time, but one of the things that I have to tell you, my dad told me when I was growing up, he said, Alexandra, I'm not around you all the time. I just want you to know that God is watching you at all times. He is watching you, and he knows what you're doing. So don't disappoint him. Be aware of his presence, which I thought was very comforting to know that he was always watching me, although I didn't like the fact that if I got in trouble, he'll know about it. So I tried to be as obedient as I could be. My older brother was a wonderful young man, but he was being very irritated with his two little brother and sister that were all forever, and he would always threaten me that he would put me outside of the door if I don't obey him, and the gypsies will come and get me. And gypsies did come around with their wagon, and they would kidnap the children, and then and ask for the money later to return them. So one day, I think I irritated him so much that he did put me out, and I sat on the outside of my door, and lo and behold, down the way where the gates were, I saw the gypsies coming. And so I screamed, blood curdling scream, Dad will take care of you if you don't let me in. And he let me in time. Well, he did get in trouble too for that. So the childhood days were normal, just like yours. Everything was going very well until one day when I was sent to school, and my dad said, I will come and get you when it's over. And Dad did not come. What happened is the Germans occupied the Yugoslavia, and they liked our school facility very much as a building. It was beautiful, and they wanted that, and so they sent all the children home. But those that did not have a family, and in my case, I found out that my home and everyone that was in it, the governess and the servants and my little brother, in fact, they were all killed because the bombs that were bombed by American planes and the English planes actually destroyed many, many places, and our home was one of them. So there was nothing left. So they put me in an orphanage in Belgrade. And that was a different life that began to, my life began differently then. But God was preparing me for something. Even though it was difficult, I've learned that there are people that care. We had a sweet mother that took care of the orphans in the orphanage, and she was a mom to all of us. She was gray hair, beautiful blue eyes, sweet lady that would always go and look for the ways to make each of us feel special. And so my life began there. We had nuns that took care of us because the monasteries were closed, because the communism, Tito, was taking over Yugoslavia. Of course, the king they were all gone. And Draža Mihailović was another one leader that was trying desperately to get things done. And so my older brother was actually drafted in service by Tito, and he was killed in a battle. life in the orphanage was different. But at the same time, when you are age that you are today, you learn to adjust because you don't really worry about things as adults do. The bombing raids, I pray that you will never experience that. Bombing raids that would come and destroy the homes and the people would be buried there. And we would be actually called to go and help to pull the people out of it. It's so hard. It is so awful. You hear the cry and you get hold of the hand. By the time you move the stones and anything, they're gone. It was awful. But we did that every day after the bombing raid. We did go to school, but we did that kind of work. And there was a German army that was not too far from the orphanage. And we actually had they had trenches there, and the Germans would go in the trenches during the bombing raids. But sometimes, actually, they would take us and invite us to come into the trenches, which was very unusual. But those Germans that were there, some of them were very kind to us as orphans. We had many, many times you go to bed at night and the sirens would come up and you have to get up and run and get out in the trenches or get in the basement and pray that that the bombs will not hit the building. Well, one night while we were asleep, the Germans came to our door, and it was an SS group. These are the special forces that Hitler actually organized to do the bad work. And SS troops came to our door, and they told all of us to get up and get out of the beds and follow them. And we had to go in the dark. We had to go outside, get in the trucks, and they took us in the trucks. Our mom, that we all loved, was separated from older girls of my age. We were separated from her. With the younger children, she stayed with them. I later found out that she was actually sent with those children to Russia because they were Russian background, to Siberia, where they were all killed by Stalin. But we didn't know where we were going. They took us to the train station. They opened the cattle cars, and it was horrible. The cattle car was full of people with children, and moms and dads, and children were crying. There was no place to sit down. It was everybody's standing room only. And nobody knew where we were going, what was happening. And next thing we know, after the train went for a while, it stopped. At one point, it stopped and opened the doors, and people were trying desperately to get something to drink or whatever, but they were throwing potatoes, rotten potatoes on the ground, and the people would go for it because they were hungry, but they would scream, "Oh, you're just the pigs, you're nothing but the pigs." Very humiliating. So we still didn't understand what was happening. We didn't know where we were going. And until we came to a place where there were fenced-in area, and there were people standing in a striped kind of clothes, desperate looking. It was terrible. We looked like a prison, which we didn't know why we were taken to the prison. And they led us inside, marched us all in, lots of people. They separated us from men and boys, and they shaved our hair, and they made us all go into a big room where we had to take all of our clothes and stand naked in this room under the spigots of the cold water that was coming on us. And there were soldiers in the corner standing with the guns. And then after that, they sprayed us with a DDT powder, which was to kill the bugs, whatever they were. And then they made us go into the corners and to pick up any discarded clothes that were from those that died, murdered. Many did not survive. And then we found out there was a concentration camp called Dachau, which we did not know at the beginning. Then they pointed us to the barracks where they didn't have the beds. They just had a bunks kind of built on, and you had to kind of climb in there and find a spot. Life was obviously horrendous. There was no, you couldn't ask any questions. There were guns. There were soldiers standing with the guns all the time. If you stop, they shove you with a gun or they kill you. We had to do the work that they assigned us to do hands. One of the things had to clean the latrines by scooping it up with your hands. All of the dirty latrines with all just a horrible ammonia smell. It was just awful. Many passed away and died. We had to take the barrels, wooden barrels that would be loaded with children that were half dead. And we had to move it. It would take 2 or 3 of us to push it to the trenches and throw the bodies in the trenches. And you had no questions. You don't ask any questions. You don't defy anything. You just do whatever you're supposed to do. And then they would throw the acid over them. It was a terrible time. I don't know how long, really, as far as the number of days, I can tell you, or I would say approximately, I was there about maybe 2 or 3 months. I don't know, maybe less, maybe more. But one day they took a group of us and put us back on the train, and they took us to another place. At that time, they took us to the island Rügen, which is in the Baltic, which was a labor camp. They used us there to do a lot of work, heavy work, like laying the railroad tracks, digging trenches and concrete, unloading ship docks from the coal from the ship dock. Just unbelievable heavy work for our age and size. I probably didn't weigh but maybe 50 pounds at that time. Then they did a lot of experiments. The injections, they would give us injections. Had boils all over me. One day they took a bunch of us and tied us to the chair, and they took the tonsils out without any anesthesia. Many died. God saved me. I could have and should have been dead by now, but for some reason he chose not to. Many girls committed suicide. Many hung themselves because of the abuse. I was, again, very fortunate because I was little in size. I was not being noticed by the men as some girls were. They were very terribly abused, and when they would be brought back into the barracks, most of them committed suicide. They hung themselves or they cut their wrists. It was a horrible time. It was a horrible time. Only once a day, they would come with a truck that would have a tin cup that you would have, and they would give you either a potato soup that was supposed to be potato, but it's really nothing but the water, or a pea soup with the weevils floating on top. Maybe once in a while you'll have a piece of bread. Days went, no bath, no, you wore what you had, and that's it. You slept on a, we did have a metal bunk beds for some reason there, but the nighttime, the huge rats would come in through the barracks, through the cracks, and they would actually bite ears off, on nose. Many dead, many died, and so they were attracted to that. It was very cold because up in the Baltic. Every morning the whistle would blow, and 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 or 5, and we had to jump down and go outside and stand to be assigned for the work that we had to do. Well, you know, it was terrible. It was awful. But the worst part of it is I began to hate. And you know, when you get to the point that you hate, your heart is turned hard. And you hate and you question God's existence. That's when you're really going to die. That is the spiritual death that was beginning to take hold of my life. And I was to the point that I was hating everything and everyone. And I just wanted to die desperately. I wanted to die. I was afraid to hang myself. I was afraid to cut myself. Number one is because I was never allowed to ever think that way when I was growing up. But that's not the point. The point is I was afraid I will live through it and suffer more. And so I thought the best thing I can do was to go to my Lord and ask him to take my life. And that was the right thing that I did. I crawled up on my bunk bed, which was nothing but a straw, and I started praying and asking God to take my life. I asked him to let me die tonight, that I could not open my eyes anymore. Please take my life. Don't let me go through this anymore. And I cried, and I talked to the Lord, and I begged him. And you know what? I did not die. What happened is when the whistle blew and I woke up, I was different. My heart had changed. I was filled with hope. I was filled with love. My heart changed. I did not have that bitterness that I had before when I went to sleep. God said, no, I'm not going to let you die, but I will change your heart. I will give you a heart of love for everything that's around you. And I ran outside to stand outside, and I ran to the other women, other girls, and I said, you know what? God is going to save us. We're going to live. We're going to be okay. They thought I had lost my mind. They were convinced that I have lost my mind because I was so different from what I was before. And so I said, no, believe me. God is going to save us. God is with us. And so we went on to work. The work did not change. Things did not change at all. We had to do everything that had to be done. But my attitude, my heart has changed. I had a hope. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that God is with us and that he will see to it that we'll go through. So as the time went on, I don't know how long afterwards, not terribly long, we noticed that the thinning of the troop Germans in our camp. There were not as many as we had in the beginning. And as the time went on, there were fewer and fewer in the camp. And so one night I said, okay, this is it. We're going to get out of this place. We know our way to the train station. We work there all the time. Let's just try to get out. So the 10 of us got together, and late at night, we decided to go to the gate and go run to the train station. Crazy as it may sound, I said, we're going to do it. And so we went, and you know what? What was so amazing but true? The German soldier was at the gate. The gate was open, and a German shepherd was right next to him. You would never, never, never come close to the German shepherd as a rule. He will jump right on you and eat you alive. But he did not move, neither did the German guy move. The gate was open. We crawled out of that place and ran to the train station and hid inside the car, just like the one that brought us in. And we crawled inside. There was nothing in there except us. And we just stayed in the corner. And we just stayed there until at some point the train began to move. And it went on and on and on. We didn't know where it was going, but we knew we were leaving the island. And so one of the girls, at one point, when the train stopped, after 2 or 3 days, it stopped there was a forest in front of us. And the girl stuck her head out to see how long the train was. And when she did that, she pulled back and she said, "You will not believe this, but the whole train is full of German soldiers." And they were all running out of the train into the forest. Well, the young man, German man, saw her, and he thought she was the only one there because he couldn't see us. He waved frantically to her and said, "Jump, jump, run to the forest, jump." Well, you know, we would not ordinarily follow the German soldiers. We were running away from them. But the pleading look on his face, frantically telling to jump, we decided to do that. And we all jumped off the train and ran into the forest. Very short time, the whole train exploded. What was happening is that the Germans that we did not see in a camp were evacuating because the Russians were advancing. And they knew that, and they were leaving, and they were running away, and they wanted to destroy all the evidence that they had. So they all ran into the forest, and they didn't care about us. They were looking to save themselves, fortunately, and we ran too. The planes were flying over us. We did not know who they were, but found out later there was a British planes. It was a town called Lübeck, and it was occupied by the British at that time. So they were shooting down. None of us were killed. We had some injuries, but nothing major. In the morning, the British came and they started flushing out all the Germans out of the forest, including us. Many have hidden into the homes that they could hide, but there were so many they couldn't all hide. So they flushed us out into a big corral area with our hands up. They recognized we were prisoners, so they separated us from them. And assigned one British guy to take us to the big apartment building. And when we came to the apartment building, he knocked on the door, and it was a sweet elderly lady, gray hair, that was standing shaking, scared to death. We didn't understand what he was doing, but she grabbed the tablecloth off the table, our dining room table, and put it across her shoulders. And he was basically pointing to her to get out of the place and for us to go in. And we waved our head and said, "Dave." So he said, "Out on the street." So we had to go on the street, which was not safe. But we went into the basement of the building where the Red Cross, many people were there. We slept on the concrete floor. Many, many people were there because they had no place to go. And the Red Cross would come and bring us soup once a day. So that was our safe spot for the time that we were there in Lübeck. Until one day, as I was looking up the ceiling, and windows were level, street level, I could see the legs of the soldier that I recognized the uniform, Yugoslavian uniform, and he was speaking a language that I knew. And I ran upstairs and told him we were down here. One of the girls died, so we lost. There were 9 of us, and they took us to the prison camp that was liberated. In the prison camp, they gave us a package, and guess what? That package was a Red Cross package from America. That's the first time that we've ever heard of the country, America. And in that package was all kinds of goodies. One of them was peanut butter. And of course, I've never seen a peanut butter, so imagine what happened when you took a spoonful of peanut butter and you couldn't swallow. Yeah. For a long time, I wouldn't eat peanut butter, but I love it now. I've gotten accustomed to it. And so we had lots of, it was, had to be very careful how much you eat because your stomach has been empty for so long. It has been starving because we just didn't have any food, and it was terrible. So had to be very careful how much you ate and not to get sick. But after the war, you will probably have been studying in history, but what happened is the Germany was divided in American zone, British zone, and Russian zone. There was a Russian occupation, Berlin and all of that. You remember, you heard of the big wall. Remember, President Reagan is the one that said, take that wall down, you remember? So we were in the British zone at that time. Well, when I was growing up, was one of the things as an Orthodox, you have a godmother and godfather. And I had a godmother, and godmother had a son the same age as my older brother. And when my mom died, the godmother was very instrumental in my life. She was fitting in the areas that moms usually do, take the girls shopping and do special things with her. So godmother was very important, and her son was same age as my older brother. Well, one day, while I was in a displaced person, what happened is, a lot of people had no place to go after the war, and I actually had no family, I had no home, and so I had to give up my citizenship. So I became stateless, no country. And a lot of people, there were a lot of Russian people there. They're from different countries, and Russian people, interesting enough, if you study the history, Stalin was not a good leader. He killed a lot of people. And the Russian prisoners didn't want to go back home because they knew if they go back, they would actually put them to death because they were not allowed to be caught as prisoners. So many of them committed suicide, basically, rather than to go back. But we had a communist leader. The communists seemed to always want to take an opportunity to start running things. And so that camp where I was put, called Displaced Persons Camp, that's people that have no place to go, was actually communist. And but one day, a young man, well, he was in his mid-30s by that time, came to organize the Boy Scouting and Girl Scouting. And Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in Europe is really a working organization. And we were having a good time, but Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts were always to be ready to go and do some work and help people. And he came to organize because the people really needed to have something organized there. And wouldn't you believe that was my god brother, my godmother's son. And he was in awe. The picture that you see there, that was one of the pictures in a book, but that specific one was one that he had actually of me when I was in school. And his mom gave him a picture and said, you don't know, somehow you might find her and take care of her. And so he was so excited to find me. And he said, you're going to have to go with me and go to American Zone, where I'm married to a girl by name Katya. She's from Russia. And you can come and stay with us. Well, when I went to ask the authorities to let me go, of course, being a communist, he did not. He would not let me go. He, in fact, threw me down the stairs, said, you're just not going anywhere. Well, so Igor had to go back. Like 2 months later or so, some real good people in the camp that I was in were so kind and caring for me. This is the one thing that God did. Our Lord, when he changed my heart and convinced me that he is with me all the time, did you know I learned to see Christ in many people. Those that really love the Lord, they showed with their attitude and their goodness of their heart. And so several of those families got together and decided to put me in a mail bag, and put me on a train in a mail bag and take me that way. So that's what they did. They put me in a mail bag, one of those big mail bags, and somebody, of course, went with me, and they put me on the train and went from British zone to American zone in a mail bag. And when I got there, they took me out, and his wife met me at the train station. But he was in the hospital. And he died before I ever got to see him again. The only time that I saw him was the body that was sent to us, and we had to bathe him and dress him for the funeral and bury him. So I didn't get to have a privilege to know him. But anyway, in a American zone now, I was living now in a Mönchhof, which is near Kassel. Now I was in American zone. Now I was very sick. I had an ulcer, duodenum ulcer. I had a tuberculosis. I was just very sick. My body was just totally wasted out. And they put me in a hospital where I could get a little bit better food, fortunately. So I was in a hospital for a while there. I was in that camp, which was different. Families with the children. We had a church, actually, which was wonderful. We had people that had classes organized because, you didn't know how long you're going to live there, 4 years. So they had school and various things provided. We had scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. It was not like a home. We had one room that I shared with several girls. I had one bed, and I didn't have but one dress. I would wash my dress periodically and put it under me at nighttime to dry it with my body so I can wear it the next day. And it was hard, but something that I learned during the bad times and good times, there are always good people and bad people. And there are bad people that know how to approach the girl and say, look, you can have all these nice things that you don't have if you just do what I asked you to do. For you girls, I'm telling you, I've learned you lose your life for things. Things don't matter. Things you have, they don't matter. It's what your heart is, your lifestyle, that you don't surrender yourself and give in to the people that are not honest and true to what the life should be like. Well, what happened is some girls made those mistakes, and the consequences were pretty bad. So we had some tragedies, and they had to learn a lesson. But it was a blessing that my dad taught me. Remember, God sees you. God knows what you're doing. And he wants you to walk on a straight path and follow his commands. So fortunately, I remember that. The day, many opportunities were there at the camp. I was able to work with the families that have children, and I always loved the kids. Oh my goodness, I think they're such a blessing. And so I would volunteer to be a nanny to all of the families. Babies, over here we're so blessed. The babies, we can buy the baby food. Over there, you had to chew it yourself and then spit it out in a spoon and feed the baby. Not a healthy, so it's the only way the child can have some food other than a mama's milk. So we just did all kinds of things to help mamas with the children. So my life was just really driven toward the little kids. And I knew that God wanted me at some point of time to be involved with the children. But one of the things that I really, really wanted to do, which probably to some of you sounds strange, I wanted to be a nun. And want to know why? It's because I really felt like I wanted to spend a lot of time praying at the foot of the cross, because I felt that God speaks to you when you're alone with him, if you dedicate your time. So I thought, well, I wanted to be a nun and I want to work with children. They assigned, after the war, people had to go somewhere. They couldn't keep us all in Germany. Government, American government and British government couldn't feed the people forever. So they had to kind of assign them to go to a little bit, a few of them to different countries. And so they had different quotas for the people to go into different countries. I was assigned to go to Morocco. Can you imagine? A single girl going to Morocco. That's totally different lifestyle there because the faith is not what I grew up with. It would have been very difficult. So the God graciously introduced me to a family that was coming to the United States because they had relatives here. And they said, look, don't go to Morocco. When we go to the United States, we're going to try to get someone to sponsor you to come to the United States. But that time I was 19 years old. I was ready to go somewhere. And so they came to the United States, they came to New Jersey, and they went and talked to some people in the Russian community because I was Russian background, and asked if anyone would sponsor me. And there was a family by the name Korf who were in the lumber business, and they said, yes, we can sponsor her as a student to come. And another family said, yes, we can have her stay with us for the time being. So the day came when I had to go and get my passport. You're talking about being excited. Wow, that was a special day. To get on the train, where there were no seats because there were so many people going to Frankfurt to get the passports. I didn't care if I stood all night and all day. I was going to Frankfurt to get me a passport. And the interesting thing I have to tell you, when I got to Frankfurt and came to the embassy where the passports were to be picked up, it was a window that you had to come to. And as my turn came to that window, guess what? It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and the window closed and it said it's a coffee break time. That's American way. It was a coffee break time. So I learned that there was such a thing as a coffee break at 10 o'clock. So I had to stand there and wait till they finished their coffee break and then get my passport. And oh, goodness, it was such an exciting time. And I was on a train going back, and it was a day that I had to go to Bremenhaven, where the ship was waiting to take people. It was Marine Swallow, military ship that was taking people. And so I had to go to Bremenhaven, and of course I had one dress, but there was a sweet lady that said, I'll make you an outfit. So she made me a two-piece outfit, which was wonderful, with my cardboard suitcase, with shoes that had wooden soles, and suitcase had books. That's all I had. And so I came to Bremenhaven, and I will never forget standing on the deck waiting for that rope to release that ship so it would start going, because I just knew something is going to happen and I'm not going to leave. It was very exciting. There were a lot of people and a lot of waiting time and crowded. We did have a celebration for some reason. I guess trying to keep people happy and busy. They had to, what they called, to select a Miss Marine Swallow of the ship. And I wasn't going to go participate in that. But there was a girl on the ship that was going to Halifax to meet the boy that promised her that he was going to meet her there. And she had lots of beautiful clothes because she did things that she shouldn't have. But she said, Alexandra, please go with me. I will dress you up and we can have a good time. I said, no, I don't want to. She said, no, but that would make my mom really happy if you would go with me. And so she did persuade me to dress me up. And we went down to the room where they had Marine Swallow selection, and lo and behold, I was selected. against all odds. I guess she dressed me up very nicely. Unfortunately, when we came to Halifax, he was not there. The young man promised her he was not there, so she had to go back. But I want to tell you something. I don't know how many of you have ever been to New York and have seen Liberty, the lady, the Statue of Liberty. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, that's an exciting moment when early morning, oh, it was just beautiful. Early morning, we were all up on the deck looking at the Statue of Liberty coming up out of the fog. It was a moment that we knew we were coming to a free country where that we can worship God freely. It was the freedom. Something I pray, Lord, please keep it that way. And I'm afraid it's not happening today. Things are changing because our attitudes are not the one that should be either. We cannot be blinded by what's happening around us all the time. We cannot close our eyes and our ears to what's happening around us. We've taken God out of school. We've taken God out of many places. And we are going to pay the price for that. I'm afraid the Statue of Liberty is going to be knocked down too at some point because it represents the freedom. It was a wonderful moment to see that beautiful sight. So I came to the United States, came to Ellis Island, went through all the procedures of it, and there was a family waiting for me on the other side. And guess what I had first thing? That was American. Hot dog and Coca-Cola. That's always going to be an American thing. Coca-Cola and the hot dog, yeah? I love corny dogs. Do you like corny dogs? I love corny dogs. In fact, we went to a rodeo last night and had a corny dog. Oh, they were delicious. It was really good. Yeah. But the life began to change. I remember, you all don't remember because you're young, but some of you that might remember Woolworth. We had a dime store. I remember going into the dime store and I thought I was at Neiman Marcus. The things were spread out, you could have just about anything and everything you wanted for such a small amount of money. For someone that had absolutely nothing, everything was just big thing, But those are the things that we tend to accumulate over the years. I lived in New Jersey. I went to see the priest of the church and asked him, where's the monastery? He said, why do you want to go to monastery? I said, well, I just want to be a nun. What would you do when you're a nun? I said, I would, of course, spend a lot of time praying, and I want to work with the children. And he was a very wise priest. He looked at me and he said, Alexandra, why don't you wait and see what God has for you? Don't do anything right now. So what happened is I was able to, I worked on the hose factory. I don't know, you remember women wore hose that has seam on the back? Well, I was one that put those things together. At 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would finally go to sleep at the machine. It's a very monotonous job, but I worked there. I worked on the glass factory. I worked actually in a Walt Disney studio in New York painting cartoons. I appreciate the cartoons more because I spent a lot of time painting those things. And but then I was fortunate to receive the scholarship to go to school in Memphis, Tennessee. I know I'm taking off a long time giving you my background here, but I'll speed it up. I'm sorry. In Memphis, I came and I worked for Dr. Wadlington as a medical technician and lived in YWCA. And we had pre- different pastors that would come and have a service, a weekly service at the YWCA. And one day there was a pastor, Brother Coleman from Cumberland Presbyterian Church, that came. And I was full of questions. I was asking him a lot about the Bible. And he went back to church and he told the young people there, you need to ask her to come and speak to you. And so one day I had a call to come to speak to the youth at the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. And it was a young man that drove the Lincoln Continental with leopard skin seats in a Navy uniform, handsome guy, with two young ladies that came to pick me up. And that happens to be my husband today. We've been married now 63 years. And God has been very, very gracious to us. We've learned a lot together. Nobody's perfect, and no one always does everything right. But we strive to honor the Lord with our lives. And we had to learn together a lot of things. And at some point in life, after our children, we have two sons and a daughter. After they all are grown, when I was 68 years old, most people retire, don't they? I said, no, that's the time to refire, not retire. I felt like God was calling us to work with children. And I said, this is a time we'll need to. And I've never worked in Russia, but that's where my mom and dad came from. That's my heritage. I said, I really want to go and see what we can do for the orphans in Russia. And so God provided the opportunity to go. And I promised that I wasn't going to deviate from the group that went to do the street ministry, but I did deviate. I hired a cab driver, and I said, take me to the orphanage. And went to the baby orphanage, which was amazing how God opened the doors. And trust me, that was God's will, because you cannot go into the orphanage without the permission and paper from the Ministry of Education. I didn't have any of that. I walked in, they welcomed me, they loved me, they showed me the children, and I saw the little boy that they said he will never walk. And I said, God, this is a child that we need to bring over here to help him. And we started working with the orphans, handicapped orphans, making provisions for them to come to the United States and get some medical help, and praying that God would provide the family for them as well. And one little baby that was about 2 months old that I saw, and I never prayed for any child as hard as I did for her. She had no arms. She had partial right arm, only half of the arm with two little fingers, but the other left arm was not there. She was only 2 months old, and they said, no, she's not perfect, baby. And I said, that's okay. I would pick her up, and I would hold her, and I would pray, God, help me. Help me find a family for her. Well, little did I know that baby turned out to be my granddaughter. Our son and his wife adopted her. And we're just so blessed that God provided over 100 and some families that adopted children. Problem? Yes. Difficulty? Yes. But you know what? We don't turn away from what God gives us a challenge to reach out to those that needed to be helped. And so we were able to be a part of the lives of many lives. Some difficult, some not so difficult, but that's okay. God graciously gave us that opportunity. God opened the doors, and God shut the doors. He really did. We had a perfect time for 14 years. We were able to work there. Now we cannot. But we still are in touch with the children that are handicapped. And hopefully somehow we can help them one way or the other. So that's our dream and hope. But I want to tell you something that is really heavy on my heart, that we need to be smart. Number one, we need to spend our time with the Lord every day. Every day, every day. First thing in the morning, I would challenge every one of you to spend with the Lord. And that one good way really is to spend reading a Proverbs. You know, Proverbs come every day is your calendar. You follow the calendar. And the Proverbs are just full of guidance and information and the truth for us. And then also Psalms, because we can praise the Lord. That's number one. Number two, that we must be really conscious and be praying to God that God would protect our land, our people, and our government. Pray for our government, that our government would make the right decisions for what needs to be to keep our land from turning into a land that is not honoring God. And then pray for the persecuted Christians. We have so many persecuted Christians that are being daily slaughtered, and you know that. Children and moms and dads are killed. We need not forget that. Every day we need to pray for them, that God would please protect them. There's just so much there that we are so blessed. We are so richly blessed where we are. And I would just ask all of you, wonderful, sweethearts, don't take for granted your daily, when you wake up in the morning, don't take for granted. One thing that I have to say about my sweet husband, he always says, honey, do you know what's today? I said, what? He said, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So we remind ourselves, yes, we must be rejoicing every day as a gift from God. And you know what? You are so fortunate, so privileged to live in a land that is free right now. Just remember, it's right now. We don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. So take advantage and do all the good that you can do today. You know, God tells us He is forever with us. But you know, we need to do our part. It's very important to honor God with our prayer, to honor God with our love and gratitude to our parents for giving us opportunity to go to school, for our leadership in the school, a place where we can be safe and learn about the Word and honor Him. This is so important, very, very important. And I pray for all of you daily, and I pray that God gives me opportunity to honor Him by coming to a place like this and to lift His name up high. And I thank you so much for having me. God bless you.